Alright, well, ask and you shall receive. I got a message about actions and size rods that I use. So I'm going to go through a couple of the basically really 4 different ones that will pretty much cover every different angle you can possibly imagine. So I'm going to start out with the smallest rod that I ever use is a 6.6 medium. It's a medium power, fast action, and mainly if I'm kind of short, so if you're taller, you want to use a longer rod. But a 6.6, if you're 5'10", even 6'1", this size rod will do. But this is a 6.6, and I use this one mainly for jerk baits. Use it a little bit for top water. Every now and again I'll use it for small crankbaits or even anything really that you need that extra little bit of time for that fish to grab that bait. Because with a medium power, the tip of the rod has a lot of flex. You see how much flex that is? The reason why you want to use a medium action for something like that is because when they grab this jerkbait or they grab that crankbait or anything with treble hooks, really, if they grab that, you want them to be able to, that rod to pull up to cover, for them to be able to grab that bait and hold on to it while this rod flexes. Otherwise, if you have too stiff of a rod, you're going to rip those treble hooks right out of their mouth. All right, so when they come and get this bait, they grab it, and then this rod is going to flex, and then it's going to penetrate those hooks. Now with a medium power rod, fast action means that it's all tip. See how that it doesn't flex much. There's more backbone. You fucking dick. There's more backbone than there is tip. So see, you got 1/4 of the tip is flexing, and then 3/4 of the rod is the backbone. So you want that flex, all right? So that's the 6.6. Use that for jerk baits and anything with treble hooks. Really is easy, except for smaller crankbaits. You don't want to use this for something with a big crank like a 5 or 6XD, 8XD. You need something a little more powerful than that. So that's that one. Then the second one, this one is a 7-foot medium heavy fast action. Now this one you're going to want to use for I got a swim bait on here. You can throw swim baits on this. I use my spinner baits on this. I think mainly spinner baits and swim baits. Buzz bait. I use a buzz bait on this rod, and that's about it. But so same thing here. See, this one has a little bit of flex at the tip. Same thing, because the fish are going to push this bait. So when they come get it, they're going to grab it and push this bait. So you want that rod to be able to catch up to it as it flexes and then penetrate the hook. It's got a lot of power to it. A much stiffer backbone than that 6.6, but it's got just enough for it to penetrate that hook and for you to keep them pegged, because you got that flex there to keep up with it. Now keep in mind also that if I only use fluorocarbon for this kind of stuff, unless it's a top water, I'll use braid. But everything else, all my other applications are fluorocarbon. So if you have any other line on this besides fluorocarbon, mono is going to stretch way too much. You don't want to use mono. And braid has no stretch at all. So another good thing about having a medium power rod like the 6.6 is that if you're using braid, that braid has no stretch at all. So that tip is going to give you that little extra bit of stretch that you need. And if you don't have it, you're going to want it. So that's another thing to remember. The 7-foot medium heavy fast action I use for swim baits and spinner baits. Okay. Now let's get into bigger crankbaits. Now this is a 6XD. Okay, mainly the only crankbait of choice that I use is a Strike King 5 or 6XD. So now what we're going to do is with this rod is completely designed for crankbaits. I'm not going to use this for anything other than crankbaits. It is a graphite rod. Some people like to use composite or glass rods for this, which is fine. But this is the big thing about a crankbait rod, and you need this to be able to cast this lure far, and you also need it for sensitivity to feel it on the bottom, and you also need it because when they grab this, again, you're going to want that flex with these treble hooks, okay? So you can see how much this rod flexes. I mean, this is like half tip, half backbone. You need that flex for this crankbait. Trust me, if you don't, you will rip these hooks out every time, okay? You might catch like 1 out of 4 versus with a crankbait rod, you're going to catch 3 out of 4. So it's a huge difference. This one is a long rod. It's a 7.6 medium heavy, but it's only a medium power because it's designed for cranks. So when you cast it out there, you want that flex to be able to slingshot this bait, okay? This rod's awesome for cranking. 7.6 medium action, and it's a medium heavy, but it's a medium action, moderate action. It's not a fast action, okay? So it's more half. What the actions mean is if you have a fast action, it's going to be mainly tip that flexes, just the tip. When you have a moderate action, it's going to flex all the way down to here, okay? And then if you have anything less than that, it's going to flex even more. So that's what your actions are. So crankbait 7.6, moderate action, medium heavy cranking rod. It's important to have a cranking rod if you're cranking for bigger crankbaits. And then this is my gold winner. This is what I use for 95% of the time. Is 7.6 medium heavy fast action. All right. This one you can see is my meat stick. It doesn't flex all that much. Okay. It's got some flex to the tip, but it's all backbone. So this one I'm going to use jigs, tubes. Any big baits I'm throwing on this, flipping, pitching, you know, any close quarters or big baits I'm throwing on this rod. I have a bunch of them, and I usually have them all rigged up with my baits. So we're gonna, you know, like I said, tubes, creature baits, flipping baits, Texas rig, Carolina rig. What else? I mean, big spinner baits, anything, you know, heavy line and that you don't want a lot of flex to, you're going to throw the 7.6 medium heavy. You can go down to a 7.3, that's cool, but I wouldn't go anything less than a 7.3 because otherwise you need that long rod to pick up. And, you know, if you're, another thing I throw on this is frogs, and that's huge. If you're throwing a frog and you're trying to get them out of that slop, if you have a 7-foot rod, you're not getting it out of it. You know, either you have a long rod with a lot of power, or you're going to lose fish. It's simple as that. And it's everything, you know, like I said, everything from flipping and pitching all the way up to a frog. You can throw a Alabama rig on this. You can throw giant crankbaits, you know, like a 8 or a 10XD with heavy line. But I mean, that's pretty much my go-to rods. The 4 different ones that I use most of the time. You know, and it's, I mean, it's real simple too. Like I said, fast action, you're going to have just a little bit of tip. You know, you're going to have just a little bit of that tip. Moderate action is going to be half of the rod, a quarter of the rod, probably down to here where it's going to flex. And then, you know, moderate light or something like that, you're going to go all the way down this far, which I never go to. That's too much flex. Probably the lightest I go to is a moderate, which is for my crankbaits, big crankbaits, 6XDs, 5XDs, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So, if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Don't forget to share the video, and I'll see you.